these are all the regulated trees, there's 100 of them.
How are you?
That's a nice even
Good.
number.
You?
Doesn't say what size they are.
Little marathon one last week or 2 weeks ago, huh?
Or is that the number that says
it was
4,
longer
7,
than normal
4,
meeting, but I
10,
wouldn't have called that
good,
one a marathon
7.
session.
It's just a rating.
It was a long one. Tonight's agenda's a little smaller. Should be a little more common name.
Or something.
Yeah, that because I didn't.
I Googled it, and they all had masks. The only you could see was their eyes or their glasses, because they had the whole, you know.
They're all 10.
ones that
But this
didn't
one,
have those masks. They
there's a
participated.
44 right there.
But those
What kind of
girls
condition?
didn't. They
This is-
cheered
oh, that's
for 'em,
non-regulated.
but they didn't participate. And then Jeff said they'll like 4 or 5 of them will buy a house, and then they don't cut the grass.
A lot of the traffic was.
Yeah, we had.
Is this just like an excerpt or just the first 100?
Thank you.
100.
They're only doing the selective clearing within the area north of that parking area on phase 1. So it's an excerpt from that overall list.
Those are ones that are not going to be affected by this.
They won't be affected yet until after final site plan approval is granted. So they will be affected later, but they're not being proposed now.
Mr. Chairman's just pulling into the parking lot. He should be here in about a minute or two.
They went 2 houses down,
So
2 or 3
This,
cars.
these would be the ones that are,
Affected now.
that they are.
They're
The issue here
parking in
is
the
that,
driveway,
and I'll
they're
explain.
parking in the grass and the driveway.
Yeah, Jeff
You
said,
know, because that's the
he said you can
culture.
drive through
Process
and
for
you know
tree
exactly
permit
whose
removal,
house it belongs to, because there's stickers all over the door.
Paving plan for the project, because they're breaking this isolated section off before they get their final site plan approval. We need to.
Come here, they'll bring another tree sheet. One of these.
Well, there's that big sheet that was in the electronic packet. That should be all the total trees.
All of them, but
Who,
they'll take them off the list
naturalization
as they
become
develop, right? Is that the idea?
and
And
they know
present them
about
as
you.
being replaced.
You have to learn English. You have to
Yeah,
learn.
they'll be on
our,
the replacement plan, landscaping plan.
What is it? Our rights.
And then this is,
People, kids don't know their rights. A lot of citizens.
Hey, he's back
this
here
is,
again.
they're
but-
breaking it off because they're using this as like.
It's forever and ever and ever. If they don't use these things, I don't want to live by our rules.
So what's the biggest regulated tree on that list then?
Do you think that's going to be any?
Because that's the only way we're going to do is one at a time. So
Video with her mom and dad being in India. Of course, it's not touched them yet.
These are just
it's gotta be, yeah.
Sir? I thought he said it was the first 100.
Yeah, this is just the first 100 trees.
It was,
The inches
it was 10 minutes to make the
number.
turn onto Haggerty Road.
34, 35
Is it blocked?
Just backed
So that
up.
does
Just
match.
backed up
So
all
like
the way
where's
to
this
the
good
party
13?
store.
That's actually
train?
the inches.
So this is just like tree number 45, and it's 34 inches.
I think we're
About ready.
ready when you are, sir.
A minute late.
Power, we're ready when you are.
Okay.
Oh, and it's in good condition.
Diameter
We
of breast
hope,
height, so it's diameter.
Welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 11th, 2023. At this time, I'm calling the meeting to order. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And can we have roll call at this time, please?
Sherry Budd. Bernie Grant.
Here.
Anna Atchison. Jackson Paul. Jeff Jar.
Here.
Brian Cullen.
Here. We have in front of us the agenda for this evening. Do we have any comments or discussions on the agenda? Then could I have a motion for acceptance?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and a support. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. The minutes. We have the minutes also before us from the meeting of September 27th, 2023. Any discussion on those minutes?
Through the chair, I make a motion, we approve the regular meeting minutes of September 27th, 2023 as presented.
Support.
I have a motion and support to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. We don't have any correspondence or announcements, no public hearing or old business. New business. Item number 1. Case 23-056, Ashley Capital Tree Removal Permit Application at 41941 Van Born Road. Applicants Tim Rydell, Dennis Schultz, on behalf of the owner, Crossroads Distribution Center North 11 LLC, seeks approval for a tree permit for the removal of 87 trees. This is located on portions of 42033 Van Born Road, 41941 Van Born Road, and 41861 Van Born Road with parcel IDs as presented in the agenda. Do we have a presentation by the township staff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. With your submittals tonight, you have a completed application form. In the electronic packet, there's a complete list with the entire tree inventory as well. And I wanted to call to your attention, right as I begin my presentation, 3 later submittals that were received that also help to meet some of the requested conditions of approval for tonight. And those are a grading plan sheet that shows locations of stockpiled material on the site that are proposed and general phasing for the earthwork that's being done on this project. A issued permit from Eagle showing the regulated wetland permit that was issued for this project related to the tree clearings, and an updated, more focused tree inventory that shows the exact 87 trees that are subject of this request, which clarifies that there are 76 what we call regulated trees and 11 non-regulated trees. So based on those 3 later submittals, I did revise my report to address those items, and so I'll refer to my more updated report dated October 10th, which was distributed last evening. So thank you for allowing those later submittals in the packet tonight. So I'll go through the findings in my report. This request pertains to 3 properties within a project area that was recently reviewed by the Planning Commission as part of the request for a Phase 2 development of the Ashley Crossroads North site, a roughly 630,000 square foot distribution center building, and earthwork and grading on roughly 118 acres of property. So this tree removal permit request is part and parcel with that broader site development request. The map here shows where that broader request is, and then within that, the area of focus, if you follow me on the screen here, you have Van Born Road on the north end of the site, Haggerty Road on the east end of the site. You can see the circle here where the area of limited tree clearing is requested, and that's kind of zoomed in on this image here, just north of the what's called the Building 6 site parking lot, adjacent to some conservation easements that have been dedicated for the Phase 2 project. So that's where the request is focused. Section 8.106 of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance regulates woodlands and includes relevant requirements for tree removal permits. And per section 8.106H2 of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance, the Planning Commission serves as the reviewing body for a tree removal permit following review and recommendation by township staff. As mentioned, this tree clearing permit is part of the broader site development that was recently reviewed. And I will mention that typically the tree removal process, when it's brought in with a development project, is all reviewed as part of the the flow of the development project. You'll have the complete tree inventory and tree removal plan as part of the plan set that's reviewed through preliminary and final site plan stages. And there's not typically a need for a separate breakout tree removal permit action by the Planning Commission. However, in this case, because of the applicant's requested phasing and some of the construction process, they felt that they needed to get this portion of the site clear of trees so that there could be some access for some earthwork that has been authorized by a soil erosion permit issued by Wayne County. And so the request here is to take from a small subsection of the overall tree removals that are going to be part of this project and ask for those removals at this time, while the balance of the removals will happen after final site plan review and final engineering. As part of the preliminary site plan review report, our planning consultant had noted that a tree inventory by Webb Engineering showed that the overall project was going to involve removal of 440 regulated trees and 354 non-regulated trees within the development area, and that there would be 2,772 regulated trees, or 86%, remaining on site. The applicant would be seeking approval for the proposed preservation plan to satisfy the requirements of part of our tree removal ordinance. Tree preservation is an additional requirement for large lots and does not preclude the developer from replacing regulated trees that are removed from the site. There are some items that will have to be addressed as part of final site plan review where what are called replacement trees, where these total of 440 regulated trees are removed. They have to be accounted for with replacement trees on a landscaping plan, and those replacement trees stand alone on top of other landscaping requirements for the site. So those are just some comments specific to the overall removal process for the trees. And the trees that are focused on in tonight's review will be subject to those same requirements. So they'll have to be accounted for in one-to-one replacement ratios if typical tree plantings are used for those replacements. So as I mentioned here, as a condition of final site plan approval, those comments must be addressed. At this time, it is assumed that each of the regulated trees that are removed in the project will be offset by replacement tree plantings in the ratio that's specified by section 8.106J1 of the zoning ordinance. In the short term, however, the applicant's request is to remove a portion, 87 of those 440 regulated, 87 trees, 76 of which are regulated among those 440 that were specified. As I mentioned, the applicant has also obtained a soil erosion permit from Wayne County for their project, and their request involves proceeding with grading activities on the site. Typically, the applicant will receive final site plan and engineering approval prior to the commencement of earthwork and tree clearing, and off-site hauling is typically held until final site plan and engineering approvals. In this case, a grading and balancing plan was provided, which is one of the submittals I mentioned earlier, that shows the approximate location and timeline of excavation and the locations of stockpiled soils. And this is essentially a markup to sheet C 2.0 from the preliminary site plan set. Based on some constraints on the site, the presence of significant conservation easements, and the phasing needs for this project, temporary stockpiling of the entire balance of the proposed removed soils is not feasible. And therefore, I do not have an objection to the applicant performing off-site hauling as allowed under its soil erosion permit from Wayne County. However, I do recommend that that does not occur until after special land use approval for the overall project has been granted by the Township Board of Trustees. And I also recommend that the applicant obtains that special land use approval before the tree clearing that you're contemplating tonight begins. I also recommend that a bond equivalent to the standard rate of $350 per tree is supplied to the township as an assurance or a security that the trees will be replaced as documented on a final landscaping plan with the final site plan approval. I note that the trees that are removed fall within areas currently designated as regulated wetlands. These wetlands will be mitigated by the applicant's placement of extensive conservation easements on the site, and there is an Eagle permit that addresses the location of the disturbance. I would recommend that the applicant ensures that the work is consistent with the limits of that issued Eagle permit. And so the required submittals for a tree removal permit application are listed in section 8.106G of the zoning ordinance. The applicant, again, requests to remove 87 trees, including 76 regulated trees, which are not classified as removable, as well as 11 removable trees. I've evaluated the request and the content requirements of our zoning ordinance related to the request under section 8.106H1 of the zoning ordinance. And I'll mention that a typical application for a tree removal permit requires submission of a tree survey. So the tree survey has been provided, and the specific requirements have been provided, including a topographical map that shows the same scale as the related site plan, plat, or survey drawing for the division of land. The shape and dimensions of the site have been provided, together with the existing and proposed locations of structures and improvements, including existing and proposed utilities and proposed changes to existing grades. The locations and dimensions of all setbacks and existing and proposed rights-of-way and easements have been provided. All existing trees on the parcel or parcels have been inventoried by a field survey and showed on a topographical map by type, location, and crown spread, and other dimensions such as DBH, or diameter or breast height, which is a critical tree measuring number that we need to look at. The isolated trees have been shown and tagged on the site, and groups of trees have been sufficiently tagged, or will be sufficiently tagged upon field inspection verification. All existing trees proposed to remain, to be relocated or removed, have been identified. And if existing trees are to be relocated, proposed relocations of trees, together with a statement setting forth how they're removed, would be provided if necessary. At this time, again, as mentioned, it's assumed that the trees will be replaced according to the replacement requirements of the township zoning ordinance. And finally, a statement setting forth how existing trees are not to be relocated and protected during land clearance has been provided. That statement was provided on the most recent sheet submittal that you have with you tonight. And I'll mention that I recommend all regulated trees that are not currently outlined for removal under this permit, but that will be removed following final site plan review, must also be protected until the final site plan and engineering are approved for the project. So the only trees that should be removed are the ones that are outlined on this plan until this project obtains final site plan and engineering approval. I've reviewed the standards for issuing a tree removal permit under section 8.106I of the Township Zoning Ordinance, that the protection and conservation of natural resources from pollution, impairment, or destruction is of paramount concern, and therefore all woodlands, trees, and related natural resources shall have priority over development when there are feasible and prudent alternatives on the site for proposed buildings, structures, or other improvements, and that the applicant must consider and pursue all development options available under the zoning ordinance in order to preserve the woodlands and trees. I mentioned here that the project has significant conservation easements, and that the trees that are proposed for removal are to be replaced as part of the project's final landscaping plan. The second criterion is that the integrity of woodland areas shall be maintained to the greatest extent reasonably possible, regardless of whether such woodlands cross property lines. The project will maintain 86% of its existing tree cover, and there will be significant conservation easements on site again. And so that factors into meeting that criterion. Where the proposed activity consists of land clearing, it shall be limited to designated street rights-of-way, drainage and utility easements, building and driveway envelopes, and other areas necessary for site improvements. In this case, this portion of the site is critical for access during construction, and so that criterion has been sufficiently met. Where the proposed activity involves residential development, the residential structures shall, to the extent reasonably feasible, be designed and constructed to use the natural features of the site. There are no residential structures being considered at this time, so this standard is not applicable. And then there should be only one of several possible instances where removal of trees is considered, and in this case, the standard that when necessary for the location of a structure or site improvements, and when no reasonable alternative for the structure or improvements can be had without causing undue hardship, I believe applies in this case because of the optimal location for the project site that's going to be built. I believe that criterion has been met. So I'll just summarize some of the conditions that remain on my consideration of this request, and recommend that if the subject to Planning Commission's findings of fact, they may consider authorizing this tree removal permit. I would recommend if they do that it's on the following conditions. One is that a bond equivalent to $350 per tree is supplied to the township as a security to have the trees replaced at the time of final site plan approval. That the applicant shall obtain special land use approval from the Van Buren Township Board of Trustees prior to proceeding with any tree clearing or off-site hauling. That the applicant ensures the work is consistent with the limits of their Eagle permit, and that all regulated trees that are not currently outlined for removal under this permit, but that will be removed following final site plan review, are protected until final site plan approval has been granted. With those recommendations, that concludes the findings of my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I think anything else that I have on my slides here is just the documentation of the later submittals that you received with you tonight. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Director Power. Presentation by the applicant.
Oh, do you need me to disconnect? You can,
You know what, it's this adapter.
yeah, you can try that.
See if this works.
Or you can try the prompt on the screen. That's what I always have to do.
I
There
think
you
we
go.
got some sexy. Well, good evening again. Kyle Morton from Ashley Capital. It's nice that the order in which the township does these, because sometimes we have to present first, but I think Director Power covered that pretty thoroughly. Let's see if this is going to work for me. I'm still in screen mirroring.
Usually if you have it in presentation mode, that,
It was in presentation mode.
huh.
All right. Huh. There we go. Screen. Is this working? There we go. Okay, so as Director Power covered, we're 87 trees, 76 of which are regulated. Really, what's causing this issue is we don't have access to the east side of the site. There's a big conservation easement that runs in between proposed buildings 10 and 11, and I'll get to an aerial in a little bit. It just shows that we have no access kind of north of Building 6 through this wooded area. So when we start stripping topsoil on the site, there's no way to us to get to the east side of the site, especially since the bell drain runs across the site. So To be clear, we're posting roughly $27,000 bond. These are the same trees that we intend to take down as part of the overall project. We're just asking to do it slightly earlier, and we'll put up the financial assurance to make sure that happens. We have what's almost 2,800 regulated trees, and the overall plan, all 4 buildings that we'd shown previously, only remove 440 of them. So this is 76 of that 440. It's worth noting that that count of regulated trees does not include the 4 Frankel parcels. So when we're talking about another 70 or 80 acres that are getting a conservation easement, there's a considerable amount of trees on that. So we're more like 95% on the total site in terms of trees remaining. I think we just saw this plan, so I'll skip this. So the big issue we've got on site and why we're talking about hauling material off-site is when we originally started the first buildings, we thought we'd have about 6 to 8 inches of topsoil across the site. We ended up having over 12 inches. So we have a considerable amount of material that's not buildable. Topsoil cannot go under parking lots. It can't go under the building due to its organic content. So in the first phases, 4, 5, and 6, we put those in berms. So we have berms on the side of the buildings with trees. In this instance, we don't have the area to do the berm. We're actually doing conservation easements and wetlands. So rather than build the area up, it's actually going to stay low and be a natural feature. So we have over 200,000 cubic yards of topsoil that we're expected to generate from these 4 buildings. So that's a mini landfill type mountain we're talking about if we're going to strip everything and put it in one area. We have a contractor who's willing to take this material for free, a considerable amount of it. We're talking 50,000 yards. Yeah, it's kind of funny, but they need to build a berm, a very large berm. So it's a project that they're willing to take some of the material right now. So getting the trees removed allows us to have better access, and getting that topsoil offsite helps solve a problem for the overall project. This was a slide from the last meeting that just conceptually, the really small red area in the middle, I just wanted to bring back up the road that runs out to Haggerty Road, which will run to that new traffic signal. The reason we didn't clear this area of trees along with the first phase, 1, this was wetlands, but 2, we had said we were not building the road out to Haggerty, no additional traffic was going out. Since the last meeting, I did find out from the DPS, Wayne County DPS, that the full construction contract is on the county commission agenda for, I believe it's next week, which would mean that they can sign the contract with the contractor and plan to mobilize in November is what they told us. So it's about as quickly as we could get them to move, but it's good progress.
I was trying to figure that out myself.
So this is the best aerial we have that kind of shows which trees we're talking about. The road is stubbed at the north corner of Building 6 and will head directly east out to Haggerty Road. So we just need to remove that section of trees so we can get through. The only other option would be to go about a mile around. If a truck has to go up and around, it would have to cross over an existing 20-foot wide farm connection over the drain, a little culvert. So this helps us from site logistics and efficiency. So again, this is where the proposed building goes. It's really in an open field, so we're not talking about mass tree clearing for Building 11. It's just that small connection to help with the roads in the park. So I guess I'll open it up to questions and kind of end the presentation here. I think everything that Director Power said covers the request in pretty good detail.
Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions for this issue?
I've got a quick one through the chair. Probably more for Director Power. Does the ordinance require all trees to be replanted or just the regulated ones?
Just the regulated ones.
Okay. Do you have any plans to replant all of them by chance, or just the regulated trees?
It's just the regulated ones that we had, and part of that is we're looking at preservation as a component of it, given how many we're keeping, as well as the site next door. So really, we're running into an issue if there's not really enough places to plant the trees that we need to replant, because we're impacting so few, so.
Commissioner Jarrett.
Commissioner, the presentation that the applicant put up had a number for the bond posted that matched $350 times the number of regulated trees that he had. So that's his intent,
Thank you.
as documented on the presentation tonight.
Hopefully I didn't get that math wrong.
No, you didn't. Saw me with a calculator.
Other comments, questions?
Through the chair, I have a question for Director Powers. Yeah, but right now it says that there's a $350, whatever you want to call it, fee or whatever it is for bond per tree. How is that established, by the way? I'm just curious. Is it sort of a market rate thing for planting a certain caliber tree?
Yes, that's my understanding, and it hasn't changed in certainly a few years. But that's kind of a standard market rate for a roughly 2 or 3 inch caliper, 6
So
foot
it's
tall tree.
it would be a 1-for-1 replacement, say like a 1 or 2 inch caliber tree for whatever comes down, right? So for instance, you're applying the same price to a 6-inch tree as you would to a 38-inch tree.
Yes, and that's how the replacement ratio works in the zoning ordinance. No
Right.
matter the size of tree you remove, you get credit at a 1-to-1 ratio for
Right.
each standard I think it's 3-inch caliper deciduous tree, and then you actually can get a less than 1-to-1 credit if you plant a larger, more established tree out of the gate.
So when is a tree considered monumental? Is there a standard for that?
That's something the county conservation districts and I think they're usually established at the county level, the county's monument trees. We don't have a set list of those. I could certainly look into that and see if that would apply to anything on the site. The township does have designated woodland areas that are identified on a woodland map that have some different regulations around them, but the monument trees are something that are
Yeah, I'm not
established,
sure what
think,
that
at the
is. I
county
just
level.
see out of the 80s or the 76 that are shown here as regulated, there's really only 3 that I would consider to be substantial. There's one at 38 inch, one at 34, and then one at 26. I'm not sure where they show up on your diagram. Do you have any idea approximately where they're located?
No, so all 3 of them would be in that area just to the bottom. They're right in that middle of where that roadway would be going. And
So I'm a little confused by that diagram. Can you kind of outline that a little bit?
so if you look above where it says Phase 1 in the red box, it's that kind of oblong shape that's right above it where the road would be going.
Okay.
So this slide may show a little bit better because it's actually got the tree survey kind of overlaid on it with the tree identification markers on it.
And so if you actually were to go to the site or look at a current aerial photo, it's right at the edge of that existing parking lot on the north end of Building 6.
And so our understanding, working with a tree survey company and an arborist, and then we had Eagle involved in all of this from a wetlands perspective, given this area is a regulated wetland, we're impacting part of the regulated wetland, there are some trees that have very large significance, and they're actually in the northwest corner of the site. There's some Schumert oaks and that's part of the reason why they wanted that area in a conservation easement, and they were all right with the impacts on this from a resource perspective.
So you're saying the majority of the major trees are not located here. There's only 3 in this large area, there's only 3 of importance out of about 100 trees. Yeah.
Anyone else? Comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Director Power. When is the construction bond usually required? That's after final site plan approval and before construction permit?
Yes, and those are usually handling underground work, the storm, water, and sewer utilities, and paving.
Soil removal?
That's soil removal is an interesting one because that's entirely the jurisdiction of Wayne County. So they have their own bond requirements, and I
That's
assume
under,
there's
pardon
already.
me, that's under the bond requirements are part of Wayne County, but soil removal is covered by a township ordinance, correct?
The soil erosion permit
Mm-hmm.
stands on its own in terms of bonding. And so we would typically get, as part of the cost estimate for the project, some grading work, but soil removal itself is covered by the county and not by the township.
Okay. All right. The special land use approval from the township board, that is not dependent on a final site plan approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And my understanding is that the soil removal is happening now or real soon now? That's the idea?
Not sure how much, but.
Sorry, let me clarify that. Before final site plan approval?
That's the intent, I believe, is to begin mobilization and have some removal done prior to final site plan and engineering approval.
Through the chair, correct. So the intent and why we had the phase 1, phase 2 was it's not this entire site's going to start getting graded. What we're really talking about is there's actually 2 leftover piles that were from buildings 4, 5, and 6. Those will get taken off. They're each about 19,000 cubic yards apiece. We've been slowly trying to chip away at that. You know, a landscaper coming and picking up 1 truck at a time just didn't really make a big enough dent. And it's the footprint of building 11 we're talking about, just trying to strip that topsoil off. Realistically, it's a few weeks away from materially, you know, we got to install the soil erosion, we have to install all the fencing requirements and get through the township board. So, but what we were trying to, the hindrance here is not going to be the township's approvals, it's going to be the county's approvals on some kind of non-on-site related items, and we're trying to make sure we get ahead of that.
Got it. I think the whole process is being expedited, it feels like. We're doing some things out of a different order than we normally would. Is that accurate to say that, Director Power?
You typically wouldn't see the soil erosion permit for a project already kind of in hand at this point. You're usually going to see that at the same time you're going to see the construction permits on stormwater and right-of-way work. So I think in this case, yes, the applicant saw the need to try to get that part of the project underway prior to some of the other aspects of the project.
Okay. Director Power, you also put in your recommendation that you recommend a bond equivalent to $350 per tree must be supplied to the township as a security to have the trees replaced at the time of final site plan approval. I'm not sure I understand the timing on that. It would seem to me that we would want to have the bond applied before any of the trees are removed. You don't apply a bond after the trees are removed, right?
Yes, that's the phrasing should be adjusted if it's unclear. So the bond should be in place before the trees are removed. It is there so that there's an assurance that the landscaping plan at the time of final site plan approval shows all the replacement trees being installed.
Mr. Chair, I'd ask if Mr. Morton understands that the bond has to be supplied ahead of time, not at the time of final site plan approval, pardon me.
Yeah, correct. We intend to submit the bond, the check next week, following if we receive special land use approval. Our intention is to fully replace these trees once we go forward with the project, so.
Yeah, I believe that. I know that's your intention, but the bonding process is, in case of unforeseen circumstances, the project is canceled or is delayed, then there's a way for our community to get the trees back, or at least there's monetary,
Understood.
Got it. And I think the same goes with, that construction bond. And that's why I asked about the soil replacement. When's the construction bond? What's the timing on the construction bond? If the topsoil is stripped, and then I don't think it's likely to happen, but if the project for some reason is delayed, we haven't issued a construction bond, and then we've got a hole that maybe can't get filled. So that's why I was asking about the timing and what the dirt removal ordinances were on this one. Again, had this been a process that was like in the normal order, this all would have fallen in place. We would have had the construction bond lined up at the right time. I'm just trying to ask about the possibility of how it could go wrong for us. Not that I think it's likely to, and I don't hope it does. I hope it goes well, but I want to ask it in a public forum how that works.
Yep.
Okay. If I was to make a motion tonight, I would include a rephrasing of your condition with regard to the, with regard to when the bond is required. But other than that, I think it's probably, I can't find any reason not to grant the tree permit myself, having heard what I've heard tonight.
Any other comments, questions? I have one. What's the difference between a regulated and non-regulated tree? What constitutes a regulated tree, I guess, is what I should ask.
Mostly based on ecological value, so the non-regulated trees are the trees that tend to arrive when there's a disturbance on a site, or some of the, what we call junk trees, like cottonwoods or tree of heaven, or those kinds of noxious invasive trees that don't have as much ecological value.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Questions? Okay, seeing no further discussion, is there any, you don't put it in here, are we open for public comment? On an issue such as this?
Certainly think it's reasonable to ask if there's public comment. Yeah.
Is there a public comment concerning this?
So I see nobody on Zoom.
Okay, then, Plan Commission, what is your concerns? Do we want to move ahead with the motion for this?
Well, Mr. Chair, I could make a motion at this time. In fact, I would move to grant the applicant, Tim Riddle and Dennis Schultz, on behalf of owner Crossroads Distribution Center North 11 LLC, approval for a tree permit to remove 87 trees at the site located at 42033 Van Born, 41941 Van Born, and 41861 Van Born Road, based on the analysis subject to the conditions detailed in the letter from staff dated October 10th, 2023, with the additional clarification that the bond for tree replacement shall be supplied before the trees are removed, and the final site plan shall include plans for the replacement of the trees. Submitted for your support.
We have a motion, do I hear support?
Support.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Jar, supported by Commissioner Pohl. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Do you think that would
I think-
Chair, there's two sets of memos from the Van Buren Township, one for the same date, one says revised, one doesn't have revised on it. I think it's for the revised version, so that probably should get added.
Commissioner, I think the first one was dated October 6th, and the revision has October 10th, but I would like to update the motion to show that the date on the letter is the October 10th revised edition.
Yes, that's correct.
Support.
Stay? Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, maybe we have a roll call vote, please.
Grant,
Yes.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Peter Creel,
Yes.
Medina Atchison, Jackson Paul, Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes. Motion carries.
Very much.
Okay, item number 2, extension request, case 21-004, JSB Builders LLC, final site plan. Sam Patel, on behalf of JSB Builders LLC, has applied for an extension of the effect of an approved final site plan to construct a 16,280 square foot multi-tenant light industrial building with truck well and related site improvements. Final site plan approval was granted for this request on March 9th, 2022. The site is located at 6060 Schooner Drive, has a tax parcel ID identification number of V83018990003-708, is zoned M1 Light Industrial District with a total area of 4.478 acres. The site is located on the west side of Schooner Drive which is located on the south side of Michigan Ave between Beck and Denton Roads. Could we have a presentation by the township staff, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of the content of what the request is was already stated very well by the chair. I just am here to kind of facilitate this process. We had a final site, conditional final site plan approval of the site that you see up on the screen here on Schooner Drive by JSB Builders in March of 2022. Subsequently, we had some correspondence from the applicant in August of 2022 surrounding the approval of the stormwater design by Wayne County. And after that point, there was no real correspondence until summer of this year. And in that time, staff would be taking a request for an extension to the Planning Commission within a year of the last site plan approval. In this case, that was lapsed. But we had an indication last August that there would be movement on the project. There was no movement, and then we received a building permit application on July 31st. And so retroactively, I'm seeking the Planning Commission's grace on that and to consider for due cause, request by the applicant to extend the life of their final site plan approval because it appears that they're trying to get moving forward again. As part of this entire process, I did ask the applicant to provide, help fill in some of the gaps and provide some rationale. You can see in the letter that was provided by the applicant some of the more detailed rationale, and I don't want to speak for them. I guess if Mr. Wright, the design engineer, if you'd like to kind of step up and summarize some of what transpired since then, and so that the Planning Commission can consider extending this approval.
Hi, I'm Scott Wright. I'm the architect for the owner. He was unable to be here tonight. As Mr. Power stated, the biggest thing that occurred was Mr. Patel's wife passed away, and I believe it actually happened on the night that we got the contingent site plan approval. So pursued a few things for the summer, and then he had family business that he was taking care of to the end of the year. But once January hit, he's like, okay, let's get moving on this. And as you can see, we broke it down that being that it's a pre-engineered metal building, there's only so much I could do until we selected a contractor who is represented here. But at the same time, he couldn't pick a contractor until we put together enough information that we could bid it out to several companies. And so I detailed that in the timeline. So while we weren't in communication with the township, things were moving forward. And now we are at the point where we have all the drawings completed. We are in for permit review. We are awaiting, which we think we should have, the soil erosion control permit this week. We're still awaiting the water main permit from the state of Michigan, but that is in process. And of course, the other thing that we're dealing with is DTE, and they're moving slower than a snail. So, but we are moving forward. We hope to be breaking ground this year yet. But, you know, I didn't think about it either that the approval was for 1 year. So we're seeking a retroactive approval so that, you know, all the paperwork's in place to be able to get our building permit and proceed.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Wright?
Let him move ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jar?
please express to Mr. Patel that we're very sorry for his loss. At this time, I move to grant the applicant Sam Patel on behalf of JSB Builders LLC a single 12-month extension of final site plan approval to construct a 16,280 square foot multi-tenant light industrial building with truck well and related site improvements at the site located at 6060 Schooner Drive, based on the analysis subject to the conditions detailed in the letter of staff dated October 6, 2023, with the additional condition that the extension is in effect from this date and that construction shall begin no later than October 11th, 2024.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Dina Atchison,
Yes.
Peter Creel. Bernie Grant. Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Jackson Paul,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes?
Brian Cullen.
Yes. Motion carries. You got your extension. Okay, at this point, we have some general discussion and updates. Director Power?
From staff is the next meeting will be October 25th.
Anybody from the commission? Any comments, questions?
Question?
Commissioner Jar?
Are any of the commissioners currently working on their citizen planning certification or have retained it recently?
I'm currently working on it.
Excellent, I'm glad to hear it.
Good.
And Commissioner Pauls has also attained citizen planner certification. Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Yes.
Commissioner Paul. Good
And
comment.
last question, I think the chairman was able to go to the Michigan Association of Planners meeting
Yes.
this week.
I-
Anything to report?
Real quick and easy. Yes, it was very informative. I learned a lot. Also saw some great presentations. One presented on the battery storage that was presented through our planner, Vidya Krishna, and Director Power were part of that, and they did an excellent job. Brought forth some very good things and shown forth our township. We were part of the mention of the presentation. It was a very good conference, very good. Learned a lot.
Thanks for the update.
No problem. Anybody else with comments or questions?
Clarify, that was a very good presentation by our planning consultant and maybe 3 or 4 minutes by our planning director, but I did put a few words in there, so thank you for attending. I went on Thursday as well, and it was a good conference, so.
Yeah, he hustled up there, Thursday morning, and then turned around, and hustled back Thursday
It
afternoon.
was a whirlwind day.
City, right?
Yes,
That's a hustle.
yes. And it was a very good conference. Any other comments? I then would entertain a motion for adjournment. Anybody? Motion by Commissioner Creel, support by Commissioner Jar. All in favor signify by
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Didn't think so. Meeting is adjourned. Right.
Banner expired.
That's right. I don't have to say that.